Right then, so here we have Forbidden Planet by W.J. Stewart. This is a super rare 1950s sci-fi movie tie-in, which was published in the UK by Corgi Books, and it's a very, very scarce science fiction book in its own right, and also a scarce movie tie-in, so one I've been particularly after. Now, this absolute dog of a copy turned up recently, and I jumped at the chance to get it, even though it was falling to bits because it was super cheap, and I thought, well, why not, you know? But it is in such a bad state, I really don't know if it can actually be saved. So I'm going to take all the individual pieces of it off, and we'll see just how bad it is. So cover-wise, that bit of tape is literally just sort of fallen off there. The cover is all there. You can sort of see it's there. It's just going to need sort of perhaps re-gluing back into place, which is something we can definitely do. But there's literally bits of it falling off here. And there's like a bit of sellotape residue there, which potentially we could have a look at, but it may not be too worth the effort. I don't know. Let's see. I mean, that doesn't look too bad when it's laid down like that. It's just a bit dirty. And then the actual pieces of the book itself, I've got a pile of all the debris over there. It's all there. It's actually in the pages have come loose, so just sort of, these aren't too bad. They just sort of need popping back into order, I believe. They are all there, but it's going to need re-gluing, obviously. So that's a job in itself, isn't it? Just putting the book back into order. There we are. So that's the first page. And you might think, well, why did you just bother? Why did you even bother buying one of these? But it is just because it is such a scarce book. It's going to do me for the time being until I get lucky and come across a nice copy. And hopefully it will actually be readable, just about. There we are. So that's all the bits together, which wasn't too bad. More debris there. Look, there's literally bits of it falling off, and that is because this old glue on the spine here has just fallen to bits. That's what it is. It's just dried up and died. Now, you've seen me do this before. I'm just gonna get the dust off the top of the book here. Now, I did recently buy a huge 1,000 plus book vintage paperback collection. I'm very, very excited about. And in there was some old Collins White Circle crime books from the 1930s. And after I've done this one, I've already cleaned those ones up. They just need their spines re-gluing. So I'm going to do some of them after I've sorted Forbidden Planet out. So that appears to be most of the dirt off the top there. There's probably quite a bit on the spine here. Yeah, little bits of loose glue and that dropping off. And that's why I've done this on a black sort of background, so you can see just how much debris is coming off these. The Collins crime books that I was discussing, which we'll have a look at in a minute, were so bad I had to clean the tops off out in the garden because the actual level of dust was just phenomenal. It was horrible. So I wouldn't want anyone to breathe that in. Okay, so that's the block there all together, as best I can probably get it. Now, yeah, it's not too bad. But the next thing I'm going to need to do is have a look at that spine. So unfortunately it has got detached, like so. So one thing we're definitely going to need to do is get rid of the excess spine. You can see more of it coming off. Little bits of glue. surface to be sort of as clean as possible. You can sort of feel it with your finger there. I have known people use very, very low grade sandpaper on spines, but I think that would just take this book to pieces, to be honest. Okay, so looking at the vintage sellotape damage, I'm in two minds about this. I could probably heat it up and get the residue off that way, but I think I'm probably just going to put some polish on my soft rag and give the covers a tiny bit of a dust up that way, or polish up rather, and see if that just brings it up a little bit. I think the problem with this book is it's so far gone. You're not able to do a lot to it. Hopefully this will just take away a little level of dust and dirt that perhaps will improve it slightly. It's got, like a lot of Corgis, this bright yellow back, which would have looked fantastic on the shelf, absolutely really bold and bright, but over the years has been very susceptible to fingerprints as the books have been reread and people's dirty fingers have been put on them. But this method, with just a little bit of furniture polish, I use a good old Mr. Sheen and a very, very soft worn out rag, has proved very efficient for me over the years. It's been a good little source. So if we look at that level of dust and dirt that's come off that bit there. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Now the spine was particularly bad because this bit was all covered with tape initially at one point. So I don't know. I need to tread extremely carefully on this. I don't want to make it even worse. It's not bad. It's certainly smoothed it out a little bit. But as you can see, the book is still so rough, and there's literally bits falling off it all the time. It's just because it's got so brittle. This is the fantastic cover. You see Robbie the Robot there. And if you've never seen Forbidden Planet, it's an absolute 1950s classic. Leslie Nielsen is the star, but some might say Robbie the Robot was the star. And it really is a great film. Well worth your time if you've never seen that one. So we'll do the same treatment on this one. I've got a dampish cloth here, and I'm just going to sort of go over and see if we can bring up a bit of dust and dirt, which is definitely on here, but sometimes might be a little bit tricky to see. And see if we can get this one revived. And yes, boy oh boy, was there a lot of dirt on here. It is a first printing, maybe an only printing in Corgi. The first hardback is a lot of money, several $100s. Yeah, look at this, look at the dirt that's come up off this cover. I still have to do this sort of area here. Once again, I need to tread very carefully on this cover because it's ever so delicate. And then on the spine again. So this bottom bit of the spine actually doesn't feel so bad as the top. I don't think there was as much tape applied to this bit. Coming up very nicely, actually. So yeah, the tape, there was, the vintage tape was on here, there was just that one piece to remove. But it virtually fell off in my hands as soon as I touched it. It was that old and brittle. There we are. I think that's come out rather nice. That. Once again, that's just the dirt that's come off those two bits of cover. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? When you think about it, a lot of sort of invisible dirt and dust. And the thing is, on this book would have been a nice shiny glossy cover when it was brand new. So it has put a, sort of a layer on it that we can clean up. And yeah. So I'd certainly love a nice mint one of these, but until that happens, I've never ever come across one in the wild, not once. And I've been collecting books a long time, so it does show quite how rare this one must be. So now I'm in sort of two minds, really. I don't know whether to put a strip of paper along the inside so that I've got the cover glued together properly and in place, and then that same strip of paper I can then use around here to bind this book again. I honestly don't know which way to go on this one. Yes, I'm not sure. I am not sure which way. If I just try, the thing is, if I just try to glue this spine to this mess here, it's just going to be a disaster. So I think it might even need two bits of paper bound together. So I think what I'm going to do then, I'm going to get some just white A4 sort of copying paper, printer paper. That's all it needs, nothing really thicker than that. I have got some thicker tape, but I'm not going to use that in this case. I think I'm going to do two strips of paper, one which is going to sort of come over, maybe make a new internal spine, and glue the spine to it, like so, with a bit of paper to it. And then I'm going to do another one for the actual pages of the book and see if that does the trick. So let's get that paper now. Okay, so the actual height of the cover is 16 centimeters, 160 millimeters. So that's the height. We don't need to be too exact on this. We're just going to get a rough guide, and then we can get it tinkered with once we've got an idea of how it's going to go. Okay, so all right. So basically, I do want a piece of paper which is going to cover like about that much inside on the spine, and then that much the other side. So I'm looking at a slip of paper, to be honest, about that much. So this is going to be reinforcing the spine, at least that is the plan. And some might say, well, why are you taking all this trouble to save literally one book? And I suppose the answer to that is, a lot of people would, if this had just turned up in, say, like a charity shop or something like that, the person doing the sorting would have probably just thrown it straight in the bin. So there's no point keeping that at all. But it is such a rarity that the effort needs to be made to keep it whole. And that's sort of my viewpoint on it, really. I want to keep as many rare books as possible in existence. Now, that's a tiny, now that I've put it on, it's a tiny slither too tall, but that's okay. Just take a hair off here. There we are, that'll be fine. I don't want it to be too unsightly actually on the shelf. Okay, so what we need to do then is glue this first bit onto there, just the first half, like so. That's what we're going to do. We're going to glue it onto there. Then we'll flip it over and we'll get the other bit on as perfectly as we possibly can. So that is the plan. So I'm just going to be using some Pritt stick to be doing this rather than anything else fancy. Just ordinary sort of Pritt stick you buy in any sort of stationers. It is better than the sort of the cheap and nasty stuff that you might be tempted to buy in like a pound shop or something like that. So just keep an eye to buy a decent one. And I'm only going to sort of glue one half here initially. So I'm doing this sort of the top edge. And it's certainly, I'm no professional by any means. It's just something that I sort of picked up over the years of being sort of a book dealer and a paperback collector pretty much all my life. And in some cases, I've had to repair books because they've been in such a poor state. And these are the sorts of techniques that I've used. Does actually need a bit more glue down the bottom there. I want to make sure it is every little edge is covered. Because it's much harder to go back and glue once it's been popped in. Now, be very careful with that glue. I don't want it to be any risk of it getting near the books. Okay then, so we're going to go for this. We'll do this bottom part and then that bit we'll do afterwards, yes. So this is the bottom and I want it to go sort of on there. Now in actual fact, haven't quite got enough glue on there to cover that. So I'm just going to do a tiny bit more. The good thing about Pritt stick, it will stay sticky for a while. So I'm just going to go down a tiny bit further, like so. Try and get as smooth a surface as possible. And the bit that I'm going to be gluing, I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue on that as well, just a little bit, just to sort of cement the relationship, as it were, ever so slightly. Now the good thing is with Pritt stick, you are able, once it's in place, to have a tiny little sort of play with it and make sure it's perfect. And that's one of the reasons I like it. It's not like, say, super glue where you get like one chance to do it and that's it. Okay. Right. delicate little bit of the operation here. Yeah, that looks alright. So it's given us enough room on the other side here to get the other part of the cover in situ, like so. It already feels a bit better now that it's had that stiffener in there. Just push down myself. Now, some people might have been tempted to just do a little bit of a touch-up job on the cover, maybe with some green pencil and just colour in the tiny little bits on that. But I'm not really into that sort of form of restoration. I know some people do it. They do it on comics. I've seen people do it on books before. They've just touched in the little like hairline creases on covers and things like that. But I don't really like doing that, to be honest. But that looks okay. Yeah, it looks like it's nice and pushed down there. So we've got our other bit. Obviously, is going to go on there like so, and that should really strengthen up. So I'm going to glue the rest of it now, so that we can complete the picture. And although, you know, it's basically adding something to the book that was never there to begin with, at least it is extending its life, and that's really the main thing. The main sort of point of doing this is to give this book a new lease of life, and it will certainly be a great thing to look at and admire. And I've got a friend of mine very much into Forbidden Planet. It's one of his all-time favourite movies, and he'll be thrilled to see this one. I think he's actually already got a really nice copy of this book anyway, but even so, you know, he'll be very pleased to see this one's not going in the bin, which is quite easily what could have happened to it if it had just been sort of left. There we are. It's a fairly close match. Unfortunately, there's a tiny bit of, because of the loss at the bottom of the spine, a bit of that white has come over, so I need to sort that out. But let's get the actual cover nicely pressed down now, so it's super flat. And at least then we've got a cover which is in one piece, rather than the two that it was in, with it threatening to go into some others. Got some glue on the card here. I want to be careful I don't get that anywhere. There we are. Right, so it's all right except that little bit is poking out down the bottom, but we can soon sort that. So yeah, it's funny when I put it on. It's actually gone down a little bit further on than I would have liked, but nothing to worry about. It's still absolutely fine. We've got a nice area there to put a new to re-glue the spine, and that's the main thing. It needs to be super flat on, so I don't think there's much chance of that coming off again, do you? So I just need to take that tiny bit of excess paper off. I'll have a go with the scissors, see if I can do it that way. There we are. That'll do for now. Right. So that is the cover, basically as good as we're going to get it. Pretty much. So what I want to do now, before I do anything else with the cover, I want to create another piece of paper similar in size to bind these pages together, because this is going to be the hard bit, and this is something that's going to take some time to set off. So I've got height-wise, where are we? Yeah, there we are. So I just need another piece which is relatively straight. And you can get proper book binders glue, but I do feel the stuff that's out there is more designed for antiquated hardbacks rather than the modern sort of vintage paperback of the last, 80, 90 years. It is also designed for more books of antiquity, which is fine. It's just not what we really need in this environment. There's another bit of that tape there. I can always get what I might do is get my scalpel in there. I've got like an artist's scalpel, and that might just take that bit away there, just to make it look a little bit more authentic. Yeah, not too bad at all things considered, considering the dog that it was. So there's bits of this spine. Every time I touch these pieces, more bits of glue and stuff fall off. But that is how it is, unfortunately. There's not. The idea I've got is to put this bit of paper around it, heavily glued, to try and put all the pieces together. They're all in order, in a block, something like that. And then glue the two bits of paper together. So that is my plan. So we'll just fold this initial bit here so that we've got a little bit of purchase. So it's not ideal, but it's the only thing I can think of as a way to sort of put this book back together. So I'll have that bit along like that. And then this one around the back. So in actual fact, this needs to go over a little bit further. So I want to give it sort of an even wedge each side. So have it like that, and then that round the back like so. There we are. So just give this bit around the back a fold down, and I'm just going to take a millimetre or so off the top here. Right, well, as you can see, this is what we're going to pop on. That is the plan. Because I double creased, I'm going to make that the back bit. So this is how we're looking to put the pieces together. It's not nice, it's not pretty, but it's probably the best and the only hope we've got of keeping this book in place. Now, the actual pieces aren't too bad, so we're going to have to glue the piece of cardboard and the block of paper and then hope that it stays together. Which, I'm pretty confident it's going to stick, but it's not going to be one that you're going to be wanting to read on the beach, because it probably will fall to pieces in your hands. But the whole sort of title of this video was Forbidden Planet, Can It Be Saved? Well, I think we've proved we can save it. It may just not be the best sort of read that you've ever experienced. And people who love reading on Kindles are going to say, well, there you go, so you don't get this in a digital format. Right, I think that's well and truly done. Now I am going to put some on the spine as well. Now this could be a messy old job, but I think it's probably worth it once again to give the books a bit of purchase. So I'm just going to sort of pinch them together there and whack some on here. It's just awful, but I honestly don't see any other way around this. It is just grim, but all worth it for the love of a good 50s sci-fi book. And they don't come much better than this. If you've never read the book, as well as seen the movie, if you've never read the book, it's fantastic. And the movie does follow it very, very closely. So cool. Okay, so the moment of truth, the sticky truth. Let's get this on and hope that our little scheme works. I mean, worst case scenario, at least we've saved this book from the bin. You know, because that's where it was heading. Let's be honest, that's where it was heading. No one in their right minds would have kept a book in this condition unless it was something really special. And I think, you know, this book is something special, and it warranted the treatment, shall we say. Okay. Now, of course, during the war, books were rebound all the time, particularly paperbacks, to give them a new lease of life, and they often got sent over to the armed services abroad. There was a central book depot where you could go along and hand your books in at a post office, and the books would get recycled, often rebound in hardbacks. That's already feeling better. Rebound in hardbacks, so they get a new lease of life. Once again, ever so slightly, the book has gone over, the paper has gone over the edge, but it's something I'm going to sort out with my old scalpel at the end. I think that one, just to get rid of that. But I'm actually quite pleased at how that's come together. It doesn't take a lot for Pritt stick to set, because it is sort of paper based. Because the next step of the process, of course, is we need to glue this bit to there. That's the last sort of step of the process there. So let's get the cover bent into position. So obviously that's how it would have been. So we'll pop those creases in there now on our paper to facilitate us getting it in a bit better. There we are. This is ready for us to lay it down. So that's how we're looking to do it. So we now have to do some more gluing. And then we'll leave it, or I shall leave it for a couple of days to really set properly. And I'm going to put some sort of weights against the spine. You know, when I say weights, I mean other books, against the spine, and also on top, just to keep everything as flat as possible and keep everything in situ. That is the plan, because I've got many other books that need treatment, not all like this thankfully, but I've got a lot of 1930s Collins crime books, which we'll have a look at in a minute. I've got a few more where I'm going to put the spines on, just so you can see what was involved. Now I bought this massive vintage book collection, paperback collection, recently, and I've started going through it, and there was just under 100 vintage British Collins White Circle crime books from the 1930s and 40s, early 40s, and they're super rare. I've never really had many of them. I've had a few through my hands, but to get almost 100 in one hit is just phenomenal. I'm really pleased. And they're right there, right from back to number one. And there's some fantastic authors there. It's like Agatha Christie and John Rhodes, some real big names, Naomi Marsh. And they're quite collectible. And I've got some service edition ones. I've got some, and the Indian one, which was just sold in India, which is super rare as well. So I'm going to get some of those out. In fact, I've got some here. I'll be able to sort of go through these with you in a moment. I've got about 6 or so that they've all been cleaned, i.e. the tops have been cleaned and stuff, but some of them need spines, just straightforward re-gluing, and they all need pencil marks taken out. So that's what I'm going to do. But that is actually taken quite nicely. Now, obviously, we need to get the first page open so that we've got that new fold in place, like so. It's not covering up any text. And the same on the back here. And that is actually covering up a little bit of text, but I think it's a small price to pay. Now, what I really want to do is, there's a tiny bit of paper that's come over there, because there's loss at the bottom of the spine, so you can consequently see the paper. Now, there's a couple of options. I could just colour it in green and you just wouldn't notice it, but as I said, I don't really like doing that as much as, you know, I could probably get away with it. So what I think I probably will do, and I won't do it on this video because it's super fiddly, I'm going to get my scalpel out and I'm just going to go through that little bit there and just cut it down a bit, and then we will actually have, I think we've not done a bad job there, in actual fact. Don't you agree? That's actually come up quite well, and at least with a bit of being very tender and careful, you're going to be able to read it, which is perhaps more than we could have done beforehand. You know, at least it's a copy that's not actually falling to bits. So there's that. So that is Forbidden Planet done as good as I can get it for now, anyway. Now, as I said, I bought these fantastic and gorgeous, I've just got a few of these to show you, these gorgeous Collins Prime paperbacks from the 1930s. And this was the first book in this series, absolutely fantastic, really quite heavy, gorgeous books, and these were published not long after the hardbacks came out. So this has been the first time, this is the first ever Agatha Christie in paperback, I believe, certainly published in the UK, and it is Murder on the Orient Express. It's even in its original dust wrapper, which is absolutely phenomenal and quite a rarity. So this book alone is probably £30 or £40, I would think, being the first of the series and in such nice condition. Under the dust wrapper here, it's really nice. As you can see, I spent a long time getting the tops. Some of the tops on these, I literally had to do them outside because they were in such an appalling state. But they've come up really nicely now, and in a lot of cases, such as this one, all that's required is to take out the price, although this one someone's put first. It is, although it's very hard to determine what's a first and what isn't on these, I've done my research and this is a first. Now, although it says 8th printing, that's because it includes all the original hardback printing. So it actually came out in January 1934, when they were into Express. It's one of the early Christies, I think about number 20, something like that in her career, maybe slightly less. But I believe this was the first time in paperback. And these came out just a few months, these started just a year or so after the Penguins. So obviously there are a couple of Penguins in a couple of Agatha Christie Penguins in the first 10 or so. So they would have been the first one, but this is probably the first ever paperback of Murder on the Orient Express. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. So that particular one, in actual fact, all it needed was that bit of pencil rubbed out, and they were good to go. So a lot of these have got pencil marks in, and some of them, alas, what seems to be a common problem with these Collins books is that the spines come away for whatever reason. So this is the next one in the series, alas, not in such great nick, Mystery in the Channel. And this is the second book in this series. You see, this has had a far tougher life, and there we are. Look, a bit like Forbidden Planet, the cover has completely come off. Now, unlike Forbidden Planet, these are not glossy. These are just like matte finishes. So I can't get my polish on because all it would make the covers soppy, wet, or quite frankly awful. But what I can do is take out this. There's a vintage like 25p or something like that, and I can re-glue the spine. Now, once again, unlike Forbidden Planet, the actual pieces of the book have not fallen away, so I can literally just put some glue on there and put some glue on the actual spine over there, and this one will come up. So I just get rid of this 25p, no doubt come from a charity shop or a jumble sale, and one of the facets of this collection that I bought is that the owner never really erased or tidied the books once he bought them. They were sort of kept in the state that he bought them in. So they've all got like stickers, and either stickers or they've got pencil price names inside, or price amounts, which is a bit of a pain. But on the other hand, it means I can go through and show you what actually turned up in that collection. So with this one, then I'm just going to put some Pritt stick on the spine here. Looks like I'm going to be needing a bit more Pritt stick. Been getting through it. There we are. So that's quite a nice bond. I'd be tempted to also put some Pritt stick on there, but it's such an irregular surface. I think it might do more harm than good with all the old glue there. And I have known people, they've taken sandpaper to it again and just smoothed that right out. But I think with just putting that Pritt stick in there, I mean, this is not a pristine copy or anything, but at least it's keeping the two bits together, because quite easily they could be lost. And this one would just be another book which would be gone into the midst of time without anyone getting the chance to read what is a classic Freeman Willscroft. Some of these, well, most of the Collins authors, as I said, the list itself was fantastic, and the authors are people who are still read to this day. That's not the case with some of the crime imprints of the period, but these definitely are. So I'm just sort of popping it down there. Now there is a little bit of spine wear there, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. It's basically it's just a poor, fair copy of what is in actual fact a very scarce crime book. Once again, really, really weighty. It's a really nice pre-war crime paperback, and these are rare. They just don't turn up like they used to, and for that reason alone, it warrants us saving it. So I've just got a few more of these to have a look at. They're not all that bad. So this is number 3 in the series. Yeah, Martin Porlock, X versus Rex. So this has got an old sticker in, a price mark by the way. But looking at it, the dust wrapper has done a very good job. It's saved the book from much damage. And underneath, look at that. It's an absolute beauty, isn't it? When you think this is 1936, is it? Let's have a look. Yeah, like March 1936. I mean, 84 years old as we sit here, and it's never been read. It's as good as the day it was printed, pretty much, isn't it? And the only thing we need to do is to erase this £2.50 that was in there from when this turned up in some second-hand dealer's or bookseller's shop, and someone, the person who bought this, probably the person whose collection I ended up buying, has got themselves a really nice sort of bargain there. Beautiful copy that is, isn't it? I mean, that's really, really nice. Certainly penguins from this period in that condition. They do exist, but they generally don't exist on the crime titles. They're usually the most read ones because they were so popular. So having a crime title in that condition is a real treat, actually. And certainly the Collins Crime Club, because they did hardbacks and paperbacks, are collected in their own right. They're absolutely fantastic, and a lot of people really, really, really love them. So we'll just do say one more, because this video's gone on quite long enough. What we got here, another one which is in a wrapper, but I'm not really, it looks like it's not been looked after quite as well as that last one, which was a beauty. So first of all, the wrapper then, well, it's just about there. As you can see, it's massively foxed there. So it's over the years, it's not been in the best environment, but let's be honest, it's lived through a war. The book itself isn't too bad. You can see it was heavily dusty along the top. And as I said, I've already spent, out of the 100 books, I've probably got the first, I don't know, 30 into a state where they're ready for this is their final going over. So with this one, it's just that 35p to be taken out. And I've already spent about 6 hours sorting the books out, getting the worst level of dust off them, and then starting to clean all the edges along the top to get the vintage dust out, because they've been stored and they've not even been out on display. They've just been almost rotting away there. Now, one thing that I've noticed on some of these crime club titles, you see the black edge in there, and that's because this book's got so much black on there, it's come off at the printers. The black has just ended up on there. And some of these I've got that are unread, the ink has like fused the papers together. Absolutely incredible. Anyway, there we are. So that is that last one. I'm going to pop it back into its wrapper because, hey, the wrappers are rare, let's be honest. Anything pre-war in a wrapper is good news, even though it is decidedly delicate, but not worth taping it or doing anything like that. We'll just sort of keep it all together. And what I do with my penguins that I've got in wrappers, which are the wrappers are beaten up like this one, is I just take the wrappers off. I've got a big pile of old dust wrappers, and then the mint copies underneath look fantastic on the shelf. So that's what I do, and I'm sure the person who ends up with this one would do the same. So let's go back over it. So we got those four gorgeous, the first four Collins Crime Club titles, and then we've got our restored Forbidden Planet, and I've got to say, it does look really nice. I wouldn't mind that on the shelf now. Certainly better than the dog that it was, you know. So there we go. I hope you have enjoyed my latest restoration, cleaning and restoring video. It certainly was a lot of fun. There's some good books in there. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing for regular cleaning and vintage paperback book content. There's loads on the channel. As I said, I've just bought a massive collection of over 1,000 vintage paperbacks, which I'm working my way through. And so look out for those in some upcoming videos. But until next time then, thanks once again for watching, and I shall look forward to seeing you again very soon.